this livery really did catch my eye. I saw this in the cabinet at the shop and I just had to have it. Hi there to you, welcome back to the channel. I hope I find you well. I'm Jenny Kirk and we're up here in the loft on Weir Yard. Now today we've got a review of a new model that I've picked up, and actually this is a model which really caught my eye for two reasons, and these are probably the two most important reasons for anybody building up their locomotive collection. One, the price was incredible, brand new in the box, and I just couldn't resist a bargain. But number two, this has broken my rule of not really doing anything post-privatisation. The livery on this model looked just so pretty that I had to have it, for the same reason that I collect pre-grouping locomotive models. Well, this fell into that category. And what am I talking about? Well, this is the Dapol Class 121 bubble car diesel rail car, and it's in the Silverlink livery, and I'm sure you'll agree that this is an incredibly eye-catching livery. So in association with today's channel sponsor, Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts, we're going to be taking a closer look at this model. And don't forget as well, we'll be doing a full DCC fitting guide for this model using the appropriate 21-pin Train-O-Matic decoder, so stay tuned for that as well. This is the model that I've got for today's video, and don't forget as well that we've got some affiliate links down below that take you to Rails of Sheffield, where at the time of recording these are available for £79.50. Now, as it says on the box, this is the Class 121, 122 diesel rail car. Now, both of these are outwardly quite similar models, and Dapol has tooled up to be able to represent both different versions. This particular model is the Class 121, and I am actually quite interested to be able to compare this with the Class 122 model from the same stable that I reviewed a few months ago on the channel. This was actually a loaner, and I was so impressed by it that I actually purchased it. And just so that people are aware, I have paid the full asking price for this. This is one that I bought out of my own pocket because I was really impressed with the livery, it has to be said. So let's have a look at the catalogue number here. We've got 4D-009-005, the Class 121, and this is the Silverlink livery 55027. You can see there as well, minimum recommended radius, radius 2, although I have actually got them to go around radius 1, but they do overhang somewhat, and you've got to be ever so careful. As it says there as well, 21 pin ready, and we're going to be DCC fitting this later on using the appropriate Train-O-Matic 21 pin decoder. The box is pretty substantial. It's something that Dapol do particularly well, and inside the box we've got the paperwork which gives us a lot of detail here, including a little bit about the history. So you see here, nickname bubble cars. There were 16 Class 121 built by Pressed Steel in Oxford, and at the time of writing this, I think it has since been withdrawn, but in 2017 at least one was still in operation. Then the Class 122, slightly different. It was built by Gloucester Railway Carriage and Wagon, and so they have a few little detail differences, and you can see here in the picture just a little bit, just to be able to tell them apart there looking at the front end. It is fairly subtle actually, and I had to check with this paperwork and then check with the model to be able to tell them apart. But we've also got on the back, I'm particularly liking this, full instructions on what to do with the detail that comes in the detail pack, from the speedo drive, vacuum pipes, the couplings. All of these details are provided for both ends of the model. We also get some head codes, things like that, for the appropriate models for the user to fit. Then we've also got some information on removing the body, but I'll show you exactly how to do that when we come to the DCC fitting portion of the video. You can see immediately once we get the model out of the box that actually it's a very, very eye-catching livery. So I'm just going to slide this out. That's the extra detail that I was telling you about, that the instructions show you where all of this goes. And as you can see, they are already coloured. So if you're wanting to put them all in, it's just a case of fit and forget. One thing I would warn you though is that if you do fit all of those buffer beam details, you will have to remove the slimline tension lock couplings. But that's okay for a lot of people, because whilst there were some trailer cars that were built to run with these diesel rail cars, they didn't always run with them. So it's quite okay to run it prototypically just as the rail car on its own, and if you're doing that, it doesn't really need the couplings at both ends. You can fit all of that detail. Out of the box though, this livery really did catch my eye. I saw this in the cabinet at the shop and I just had to have it, especially at the price that it's currently on the market at. And I've seen the stock numbers. They do have plenty of these, so whilst it is advisable to get in there because they will sell quick, it's not one of these things where it's a flash in the pan sale. This is a genuine bargain sale from what I've seen. Now, the livery application is what really drew me in, and I'm just looking at that. I'm looking at the demarcation down those different colours, and very characteristic. We've got that kind of purpley blue on the top, and then below that the white and the green, with some extra detail with the driver cab doors in the yellow, and then we've also got the cant rail strip in the kind of orange. So it's a very, very colourful livery, all set off with a kind of light grey roof and white cab ends. When we look to the actual front face of the model, we've also got the buffers finished in white, the small yellow warning panel, and this livery does work really, really well on this particular prototype. We've also got the tops number printed there as well, 121027, so there's no question that this is the class 121 variant. Now I'm going to bring in the class 122, so just to make sure that we're comparing like with like. That's the exhaust engine. You can see there the detail differences that Dapol have tooled up for this. So we've got the head code box, some of the other roof detail, the exhausts differing there as well. So it really is quite a pleasing look there between the two different versions, the 121 and the 122. So I'm just looking down there. The different liveries do make it a bit difficult to tell detail apart. Just going to do the juggle. You've got to be a bit careful because some of the below body detail can be a bit fragile, and there are some detail differences there in terms of finish. So that's picked out in black, whereas it's silver on the Silverlink version, but a lot of the rest of the detail is the same. We've got the representation down there too of the diesel mechanical drive to the bogies. It really is a nice package, and on the class 122, what sold me on this model was this detail and all the different colours, picking out all the different pieces prototypically. I just felt that it looked really nice, even though the rail all over blue can be a little bit bland, but not so with the Silverlink livery. This really does look eye-catching. Now, those of you who have followed the channel will know that I really have a soft spot for pre-grouping locomotives, and part of that, I guess, is down to the very, very pretty liveries that they carried. And this, for me, falls into that category. It's a very eye-catching livery, and even though this is a post-privatisation livery, and I know that I'm on record as saying that anything post-privatisation really doesn't interest me, this is the exception to that rule, and I can imagine a lot of people will look at this and think probably the same way, that this is something that they wouldn't mind actually having as something a bit different on their layout, something that brings in a splash of colour. And because it's a single car diesel rail unit, it's something that even a small layout would have room for to be able to run a passenger shuttle maybe, but also on a big layout as well, equally at home. And I'm really pleased to see this. It's not a livery that I was familiar with on the railways. I kind of tuned out after about 1991-92 on what was going on the full-size railways, but certainly this, if it had been running on my local line, I think this would have probably been one that I would have earmarked for buying when they first came out. Looking below the sole bar, pretty much the same as what we had on the Class 122. We have pickups from all 8 wheels and also a drive to all 8 wheels. So even though these would have prototypically tended to only be trundling around pulling their own weight, in model form it does actually pull a reasonable load. So, you know, at the end of the day, if like me, you're going to have one of these because it's pretty, then who cares? You can have it pull whatever you want. The buffers themselves, these are fully sprung and they are really nicely done. We've got the housings there finished in red, and then we've got the front faces finished in white, but we've got that lovely demarcation between the white and the black on the back faces. There's no smudging, nothing like that. It really is quite a sharp livery application. Looking again to the underside, I'm really blown away, the same way that I was when I reviewed the Class 122, that all of these different pieces are correctly picked out in the right colours. It really does look good. The roof detail, we've got the ribs there, possibly a little bit more pronounced, I guess. It's one of the things that British rail vehicles were, in reality, these roof seams were not as bold as these, but there's been a lot of debate over this, especially with the Bachmann Mark 1s, either to have the rib detail or to not have it. And I think that in model form, it's something that does need to have it. It doesn't look right without. But these do look a little bit coarse compared with how I guess they would be on the full-size prototype. The roof vents, though, no such problem with those. They are really nicely done. You can see they're all separately applied detail and they all fit snug and where they should be. I'm also liking some of this extra roof detail. If I just try and hold it up there, you can just see that there's clear air underneath it. That seems to be, if not an etched detail, then certainly it's a very robust, separately applied injection molded detail. The head code boxes, again, the correct shape in there, the way that they kind of, the different radii all come together quite smooth, really does work. And as we found on the improved engine green Terrier, a very light colour is very unforgiving for anything that is not quite right. And on this model, it really does look right. Even down to, you can see there, it just starts to slope ever so slightly on top, and Dapol have captured that really nicely. In the guards compartment, we've got a representation of these sort of bars on the window. The nameplate on there, I'm just feeling it's not an etched nameplate, but certainly that is pretty good. Bletchley TMD, and that again is really sharp. From a distance, I could be fooled into thinking that that was an etched nameplate. It really does work well. There isn't an etched nameplate in the box for the user to apply, but I really don't think it needs it. We've also got the lettering there on the door, just says private. Back here, the guards compartment, lettered up with guard. And even where we've got these body side vents, actually that's interesting, they are actually printed on. I actually thought that they were detailed, but they're not. They're printed on, and it does actually work quite well. We've got a few other little bits and pieces as well going on. I'm just seeing if we can... I can't actually see. Can I read that? We'll get that under close magnification and see whether we can read it, but certainly something that is showing up well is the no smoking signs in all the windows. You can see that in the full interior. These coaches, they have a very prominent interior. It's all open plan, and I can imagine filling this up with seated passengers would be a lovely little project in and of itself. We've even got that partition in there between what would have been the first and third class compartments. And then we've also got that driver's cab. And again, the detail in there is really nice and exquisite. You can see there, it really does look good with the separate seats, and I could imagine adding driver figures in there. This really is a model which shows up its interior well. We've got the windscreen wipers in there, correctly finished in the same purpley blue colour as the upper body side. The rivet detail is nice and crisp. The windows do look a little bit thick on the glazing, but you can see through them very, very clearly, so we don't get that kind of goldfish bowl effect, but you can see around the edge there just a little bit of the depth on them. It's not a major problem. We've also got a warning flash just up there in the cab window, and I do particularly like the crispness of some of this other printing on the front end. The 121 MBS there underneath the C1. And we've even got a date there of the 1st of March 1995, which I think is the last overhaul date. But certainly the detail is crisp. I'm not seeing any sign of blurring between the different colours. They do look really, really sharp. And we're looking at this probably far closer than anybody would look at this on a layout. And certainly it does stand up really well. This livery does also show up the separately applied handrails. Really nicely done. I think that these ones are part of the moulding, but then they're brushed over with the printing effect, and they do look good. And, you know, at the end of the day, if it doesn't need to be a separately applied detail, well, then don't make it. And Dapol have done just that, and it does work without unnecessarily adding extra cost. When it comes to the other handrails, though, they have done them as separately applied detail, and they work really, really well. Running characteristics for this model are good, as you would expect. It has a reasonable amount of weight to it, and it's got that motor which drives both bogies, and so it has an awful lot of torque, power and grip. And I had no problems running it here on DC on my rolling road, and indeed once it was DCC fitted, it ran equally as well, accessed all areas of the layout. When it comes to DCC fitting, then what I've chosen to fit here is the Trainomatic 21-pin decoder, and this is the standard 21-pin decoder from the Trainomatic range. It's really easy to fit, and it does give full access to all of the lighting functions. And in fact, that's something I should mention, that these models have more functions than any other model ready to run that I've seen. It has direction controlled lights at either end. It has separately operatable cab lights from both ends, and it also has a light in the passenger compartment, and they all work independently from the auxiliary outputs and really work well. And it's really nice to see that Dapol have gone to town and actually making full use of some of the extra auxiliary functions in a thoughtful and prototypically accurate way. So there's a lot of value going on here in this model for using some of those DCC functions. But to get into the model, this is where you just have to be a little bit careful. There are no screws, and also it should be said that there are no trailing wires to catch and to pull as well. It utilizes a wireless pickup method for things like the lighting bar that's in the coach. So when you lift the top up, it just has sort of like prongs that make contact that then just break away without any need for unplugging anything. So first things first, and it helps to have slightly longer nails for this, what we're doing is just below the green on this model, you're just feeling for where the body and the chassis go together, and you're just working your nails very carefully in underneath, and then we're pulling it apart, and you'll feel the chassis drop. And don't hold it up off the floor, do it very close to a surface like I've got here, and then you'll find that the entire body just lifts off like that. Inside, these are the connectors that I was telling you about. So we've got 3 pins, and they make contact with plungers front and back on the model. So they contain all of the lighting attachments for the cabs, for the glazing bar inside. You can also get access to the inside of the cabs there. We've got some access ways through in the back. You'd need to be very careful with a set of tweezers, but you can get a crew into there, not really a problem. And here we see the full interior of the model. So none of the motor or the drive is visible, which is really good because you can see through the windows. It doesn't really protrude into the model because it's very thoughtfully placed in the guards compartment area, so it's not obtrusive. Now, natively, if you want to change any of the lighting functions on DC, there are some switches that you can access. So you see there at the side, and it's got full instructions on how to set these. There's another one there as well, and there. And that allows you to turn on and off things like the cab lights on DC. But if you're going full DCC, leave those well alone because they'll all be controlled through the auxiliary functions. Now, very handily here, it's got DCC written on the box that you need to get into. And again, there are no screws. Don't let these screws fool you. You don't need to take anything apart. You just grip this box and it just pulls up and out, and it's just a plastic cover. And underneath there, you'll see the blanking plate. Now, this model, I've already gone ahead and fitted it with the decoder. But what I'm going to do is let's pretend that that decoder is actually the blanking plate. And I'm going to show you just how to get into this. Again, really, really easy. Jeweler's screwdriver, the large flathead blade. Just very carefully leave it under the side. And again to the other side, just carefully, and then that lifts straight out. You don't want to pull it all the way from one side because you will bend these pin headers. Then we get the Train-O-Matic 21 pin decoder, and what you're looking for is, as on all 21 pins, you can see the single pinhole there on its own at that end. We line that up with the corresponding pin on the header, and that's how we know that we've got it the right way round. And don't force it. It never needs forcing. Let it drop down until it stops going on by its own weight, and then with a little bit of pressure, just make sure that that is seated all the way home. Then take the top of that particular area and we can just slide that back down into position, covering everything up. Now, the Train-O-Matic decoders do have provision for stay-alives, but actually I found with this model the current collection off all 8 wheels was so good, the weight of the model was so good that that just didn't feel necessary, so I haven't bothered with that. Getting the body back on is quite simply a case of lining it up and pushing it back home. And you'll feel it click into place. Don't grasp hold of any of this underframe detail because it can break off very easily if you put too much force onto it. But there we have it. The locomotive is all back together. And this brings us neatly to the scores. First up is finish, and this really is a major plus point on this model. Indeed, it's what really sold me. This livery is eye-catching, and its finish on this is really sharp and to the point. There's no blurring between the different colours, and all of the detail that you would expect is there. I really like as well all of the separately finished detail work below the body. In the engine area, all of these accessories are picked out in the appropriate different colours, and it really does make a massive difference to this model. The Bletchley TMD nameplates are really nicely done, and actually, if you weren't to run your finger over them, it's actually easy to think that that is a separately applied etched nameplate. Such is the quality and finesse and resolution of that printing. I also like these white buffers. And and that gives us a grand total of 49.2, and that has to be one of the highest scores that a model has got thus far this year. So I think what we're looking at here, purely through its beauty and charm and livery application, is a real contender for Model of the Year. Can I recommend this model? Yes, I certainly can, and it will take pride of place in my collection, even if strictly it is a little bit out of period. Well, I hope you found that video informative and enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also check out our affiliate links in the description box down below if you want to pick up one of these fine models for yourself. And these take you through to Rails of Sheffield, where at the time of recording these are available for an amazing £79.50, which is the lowest price that I can find them brand new for out there on the open market. And don't forget that you don't pay a penny more for following those affiliate links, but it does really help out the channel. But until next time, you take great care of yourself. This is me, Jenny Kirk, saying take care, happy modelling. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian Smith, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Trish Bits, Sparky 107, George Botterini, Andy Finch, Chris Moss, Robert Sears, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grant Line Products, Sam Yates, and Dale Williams. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.